Thank you for the opportunity, and Kiran, what an inspiring speech. It'll be very hard to live up to it after you. I'll do my best. So I'm going to talk about technology 2.0 from the perspective of the information technology industry. I'm the CTO of TCS. I'm sure all of you are familiar with what we do. But at the industry level, this has become a unique proposition for all of us to pay attention to. Today, we are collectively about a $229, $230 billion industry, about 9% of India's GDP. And estimates vary on what exactly do we export, but I think we are somewhere in the 20 to 25% of all Indian exports are from this one industry. It's not just that. Globally, this is perhaps the only industry which India dominates. 55% of the world's IT is in India. I don't think there's any other industry where we can claim to be in such a pole position. If you look at the top 10 IT players in the world, almost all of them are present in India. And most importantly, that top 10 includes quite a few of our homegrown Indian companies. We have about 25,000 startups in India, most of whom are from the IT industry, and so on. So we are in a good place as far as technology 1.0 is concerned. I'm going to tell you a little bit about what does today's status look like? Where does all this headline news make sense to all of us? If this slide would stop moving, yeah, there it is. So this is a framework that my good friend and mentor, the late Professor Clayton Christensen of Harvard Business School, taught me when I took this job nearly a decade and a half ago. And we call it the Clay map in his memory. It's a very simple 4-quadrant representation of what is it that the technology 1.0 world that I and nearly 4 million colleagues in this industry, in this country, live and breathe every day. The bottom right quadrant is what we call the here and now. And a lot of the buzzwords that you're familiar with, I would summarize them to say that these are all helping enterprises adapt to the world that we live in today. It's about cloud, it's about AI, it's about data, it's about cybersecurity, and so on. And it is the backbone of what India does for the world. If I go to the top right quadrant, which is where the futuristic technologies are already making a big difference, that is where we are seeing a convergence of humans and machines. Emerging areas are playing a lot of role. I'll just give one specific example, since Kiran gave us a fantastic overview of the role that the pharma industry played in the pandemic. You see one fine print line there called digital twins. Now, this has been around for the last decade and a half in industrial context. It's been around in process context and so on. But during the pandemic, a whole lot of stakeholders in the city of Pune got together and actually created a digital twin of the whole city. And this is not for fun. This was for deciding what to do when the pandemic unfolds in a city of 2.5 million people. You could model scenarios to say, if I open up this part of the city, I allow schools to reopen, or I enable barber shops to open, or malls, or anything else, what will be the impact? That kind of what-if scenario playing done at scale with technology from TCS and many, many stakeholders coming together from the Pune ecosystem. The bottom left quadrant is about new and emerging ecosystems. Connected ecosystems across industries are going to play an enormous role worldwide in the next decade and perhaps decades to come. We are not talking about silos of saying that this is an automotive industry, this is a health industry, this is a chemical industry, this is an airline industry, and so on. But industries are going to bridge using information technology across those boundaries and create new propositions for all of us. We already see it in many ways. And what would you call Amazon? Amazon, is it a retail company? Is it a technology company? Is it a media company? It's perhaps all of these. That kind of bridging is happening in the digital world. Tomorrow, we're going to see it in every industry. So this kind of connected ecosystems using the power of technology at scale, whether they're data marketplaces, whether they are programmatic marketplaces, whether they're run by blockchain, or any of these technologies could contribute to those industries colliding and creating completely new value propositions. And then the top left quadrant is what I call the science-led future. And Kiran gave us a view of the intersection between computing and the life sciences world in personalized medicine. A lot of those algorithms are being built by computer scientists working closely with the life science experts. Digital health itself, the kind of scale that is possible today with personalized medicine, teleconsultation, and so on, rides on an information technology backbone. All of these are indicative of the value that can be driven when the disciplines in our universities, in our engineering and technical institutions, in our humanities education, in every aspect of education, gets that intersection with computing and say that, listen, computing is no longer a standalone science, but it is going to change every science that is around it. So that's the science-led future. So this is where we are, and many of us in the industry are already working on many of these collaboratively across the world. So what are the propositions for technology 2.0? Here are some options. And this could be done in the next 5 years. It could be done in the next 10 years. It could take us all the way till 2047. But what does technology 2.0 present to us as options? And I'm picking 4 relatively large potential stories. India could be the teacher to the world. Already you see a lot of, at least television advertisements on the remote teaching capabilities that our startups are offering the world. This is, in my view, just the beginning. Because the world is going to go through lifelong learning and reskilling. As we age and live longer, the skills that we acquire in school and perhaps university at the age of 20 or 25 are going to be completely irrelevant by the time we are 40. You might actually have to go back to school or to university when you're 40, when you're 60, when you're 80, because you still have productive life ahead of you. And you may not have schools to go to at that scale, so technology-enabled learning comes in. Your teacher could be a robot like my friend down here. So that is the opportunity that I see going forward. India, with our large store of interdisciplinary knowledge and the technology to enable at scale, could be the teacher to the world. We could be the virtual workforce of the world. In fact, my good friend and the chairman of the Tata Group, N. Chandrasekharan, wrote a book called Digital Nation, where he talks about the ability for technology to be the bridge between large unsolved problems, health being one, where a semi-skilled workforce suitably augmented with technology can actually provide that last-mile connectivity for the kind of health at the grassroots that this country requires, and perhaps most of the world will require in the coming decades. That's one example. With the advances in the metaverse, the advances in augmented robotics, and many other things which can be done at distance, and then 5G and 6G and other communications technologies at real time will play a role in this. It may be possible for remote healthcare, remote manufacturing, remote problem diagnostics. A lot of activities could be done by human and machine collaboratively. The technology could be built in India, and the workforce to do that might also be resident in India, but collaborating with the world, with the effects happening at a distance. Digital sovereignty, we don't pay much attention to it. But Minister Sindhya talked about the achievements of what we have done in this country with the JAM Trinity to begin with, the direct benefit transfers, the kind of assistance that we have given during the pandemic. That, in my view, is just the start. Arogya Setu was mentioned by Kiran. The kind of scale and capability that that digital application has had with all the safeguards for a democratic society, the data privacy and other safeguards, open sourcing the entire source code and making it available to the world. Those are the capabilities of a democratic nation. And that is, I think, an opportunity for us to say, how do citizen-centric technologies, the India stack is being built by many stakeholders in academia, in industry, and as a public good. And that might be something that we might give to the world and say, here is how you actually offer digital services to all citizens in every country across the world. And finally, new value chains are emerging, not just post-pandemic, but because of the force of technology behind it. And India could play a role in many of those new value chains. Supply chains, semiconductors, 5G, 6G, all of those are already in front of us, and those will get done anyway. But what are the new value chains in material sciences, in life sciences, in food technology, where IT will play a strong enabling role and result in this new world of 2.0 emerging in an IT-centric, IT-supported world. So these are some of the options. And if I look at what we could expect in the next few years, many of these actions are already underway. We heard of the importance of research and innovation in the pharmaceutical sector. And I cannot overemphasize the importance of that in the technology sector, because the IT sector today has certain strengths. We have an enormously skilled workforce. 4.5 million people work in this industry. But that is not an advantage which will be with us forever. So we need to be able to do a lot more with the kind of capabilities that we ourselves can build for our own future. And that requires new intellectual property, requires research with universities, research with global centers of excellence, and research within ourselves. And take that to the next level. A deep tech ecosystem of startups, universities, and industry is already emerging. Right here at the Indian Institute of Science, at the Life Sciences Institutes here, and so on, and across the country, there are so many good examples of deep tech enabled by IT coming up. We need many, many more of those. Research parks in the IITs, for example. Another milestone could be that we become a global technology innovation hub. I mentioned that we have 25,000 startups in this country, nearly 100 unicorns. That gives us an unprecedented opportunity to unleash the entrepreneurial skill sets of this country. We have had some fantastic stories coming out of the information technology sector, and more will come. But we need to have that right mix of risk capital, talent, and the right business models, which brings me to the last point, that we are a fantastic large market ourselves. That gives our startups, our technology companies, our academia, a test bed that is second to none anywhere in the world. Today we have more Indians who are conversant in using a digital technology like a mobile phone than Indians who regularly buy a toothbrush. I was astounded by the statistic, by the way. We sell 800 million toothbrushes a year, which means that roughly 300-400 million people would use a toothbrush regularly. But we have 1 billion people who have cell phones, nearly twice that number. So that's the market for technology that exists in this country. And if we combine the power of a research-driven technology sector with the kind of opportunities that we see in the global market, in every industry, test it in this country and take it out to the rest of the world, I think we will more than do our bit in India 2047. Thank you very much.